Some of the items of interest, and this was 2011. I went back, and 2011 was the last time we did one of these at the beginning of the year. And I think it was really interesting because the first thing on the list was the sanitation district and chloride levels. We were worried at that time about what it was going to cost us to if we lost that item. Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. And you know what? We're going to be discussing that again in a minute because it's now happening. And so for 2 years, it's been brewing. The other is the material recycling facility, or material recovery system is what it's really called, site selection. That is the MRF, the one that was affectionately going to be placed at Golden Valley and Sierra Highway and brought the ire of all of Friendly Valley and Green Mountain and people that lived around there. And so there, if you remember, there was a MRF site selection committee. Both Spence and I were on it, and we came up with some proposed locations, 3 proposed locations, and they're still trying to figure it out. So there it was, an emergency that had to be solved immediately, and it's now a couple of years later, 3 years later, and we're still playing around with it. The Santa Clarita Library takeover was an issue then. I think that a little bit will raise its head at the next council meeting, because what happened is that the city council declared themselves to be the library board of trustees. So in any municipality, it's a general law city, you have to have certain things. You have to have a police chief. And that's why even though we're a contract city with the sheriff's department, we call the sheriff's captain our chief of police, because that's a designation that we have to do by law. It also says that if the municipality has a library, it has to have a board of library trustees. And when the city council took over the libraries, they made a promise to the community. And the promise to the community was that after 1 year, they would create a citizens board of library trustees or a library commission. And at the last election, which was a couple of years ago, when a new council person steps on, you have to change who's on the library board of trustees. So you take off the person that's no longer there, and you add, so you took off Lori Ender, and they put on Tim Ben Boydston. And the question got brought up, well, what about the board of library trustees? And the council said, oh, you're not ready yet. We're going to remain the board of library trustees. And so I expect that question is going to come up again when Frank Ferry is removed and Dante Acosta is put on. And that's why, if you were at some of our meet and greets, when Marcia was asked the question by Lori Rivas, when was the last time that the Library Board of Trustees discussed an issue about the library? And if you remember, there was no answer, because in reality, the last time that they discussed it was 2 years ago when they changed the Board of Library Trustees member, but they haven't discussed it since. So we'll see what happens there. Cross Valley Connector East Side completion. Well, as you'll see, that's also one of the promised, it's one of the promised projects to Canyon Country. One was the fact that when we went through the Cross Valley Connector opening, when they talked about it, they said it now goes across the valley. If you went to that big hoopla thing that they had, you'll notice that they made you come in from the west, and they made you leave to the west. You didn't go to the east. And the reason why you didn't go to the east was because they hadn't landscaped the east, okay? And it still isn't landscaped. It's being landscaped now, and we'll talk about it. Finally being landscaped, and there's question as to why they decided to do it right this minute. The other part of it happens to be, and my buddy isn't here tonight who just loves to talk about this, is the widening of the bridge that goes over the 14. Okay? That bridge was supposed to be 2 lanes in each direction. It's still 1 lane in each direction. Some of you might have seen me during the campaign out waving my sign on corners. Okay? Well, one time I decided to go up to Gold Valley Road and stand there by the on-ramp to the freeway right on that bridge. And as I stood on that thing, I was watching the near misses, the accidents, right? okay? Until I watched one and I could see it coming. I could see someone coming from one direction, I could see someone coming from the other direction. I knew that neither one of them could see each other because there were car stops in the middle, and sure enough, one car turned left and the other car just nailed it. So I thought, gee, what a great thing. What a great way for my campaign. Yes, sir.
The search and rescue truck and the battalion chief were coming westbound, and they had to go across that two-lane bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if they had to come across that two-lane bridge at 6:30 in the morning to make an emergency response.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that was one of the things that the city said, that the Cross Valley Connector would make emergency response quicker.
Well, there you go. Now, one of the other things that I noticed was when you, if you're coming from west to east across that bridge and you're going to make a right-hand turn, it's striped so that you actually stay out in the middle of the street and make the turn. But there's enough room for another car. So cars would slide in underneath the other and they'd both turn right. And that's what I was watching for the near misses. I went and talked to Public Works and they gave me some nonsense about it's a Caltrans problem. A standard medium assessment work plan. We'll talk about this a little bit more because there, and also when it comes down to what we were told about the Whites Canyon improvement area, when you started realizing it, in the 2008-1 standard landscape LMD, Landscape Maintenance District, was formed by taking all the existing landscape maintenance districts and dissolving them, adding some new ones. And then they said to the existing guys, you get a little cost reduction. And then the new guys, of course, they got a cost increase. But the number that got a cost reduction greatly outnumbered the ones that were getting an increase. And they reformed it as a standard LMD. And they said, we're going to have a standard landscape maintenance median design all across the city. And it's going to cost X number of dollars to maintain it. And so everybody's going to pay the same, everybody's going to get the same. And we have some plan to go make that happen because a lot of the stuff on the west side, and even some of the new stuff they put on the east side, has turf, has grass. And they said, well, we're going to eliminate all that grass because it's going to save X number of gallons of water and X number of dollars. Here we are. It's now 2014. That's 6 years later. And you know what? The turf is still there. All of the new medians that are getting put in on this side of the valley are all drought-tolerant plants. The medians down Soledad are dying. And you have to ask what's happening. Are we on the east side paying for the turf on the west side? Or is it really right that the money that you pay to maintain the medians that aren't being maintained put in half the cost of the roundabout in Newhall? So we'll talk about that because it did. All right. The open space assessment yearly increase, and Mr. Leafdale is still on the open space financial accountability panel. That really hasn't been an issue the last year because they didn't raise the rates. They had enough money. Rooming house ordinance enforcement was an issue in 2011. It rose its head again last year up in Sierra Hills. Isn't it Sierra Hills? Up across from Keller's? Is that Sierra Hills? Anyway, it did get taken care of. Other things we talked about was One Valley, One Vision because of the fact that it increases the density on the main thoroughfares here in Santa Clarita. And we saw what happened when you do that in the San Fernando Valley. But here it is. It's right in our One Valley, One Vision plan. You can see one of the first One Valley, One Vision villages, Valley of Village concept being built in Via Metro. Supposedly that facility is going to encourage and have most people using their feet to get over to the train station. There's going to be a footpath over over Soledad Canyon, and we'll see just how much traffic it generates. Graffiti and illegal sign enforcement, I think the city has been doing a really phenomenal job on, and that doesn't seem to be a big problem. The Canyon Country Community Center, and we now have a rented facility that's a part of our community center, but just wait, we'll talk about some of the promises made by some of the incumbent candidates about the Canyon Country Community Center. And the last one, which I think is amazing because it's going to be the last thing I talk about tonight, and that is the Santa Clarita website meeting notification improvements. We've been asking for that. We've been asking for the agenda system to be updated, and it's going to be updated. Not quite the way we talked about, but something you're really going to like. So let's start off with billboards. I think Michael is here. Michael? Okay, he's in the back of the room. Billboards, for years and years and years. Go back to 2000. The city was saying, we want to get rid of the billboards on Soledad Canyon and Railroad Avenue. And you know, when I thought about billboards, I thought about those big things. You know, those big things up on the, you know, the big, huge boards up on the top. That's, to me, that was a billboard. And the plan, which they kept talking about over and over again until it became so embarrassing they couldn't talk about it anymore, was that they were going to save $1 million a year, and they were going to take that $1 million a year, and when it got to be enough, they're going to buy a billboard, and then they're going to just leave it running for long enough to make back the money, and then buy another billboard and take them down one at a time. How well did that project work? Anybody want to guess how many billboards that project took down? Yeah, well, it didn't take down any. So here comes. Someone comes along and now says, we're going to have a billboard relocation program. I remember reading the article in the paper. You probably read it too. Sounded like, boy, oh boy, everybody's got a real agreement here. Finally, we're going to get them billboards down. And everybody's just singing. I went to the Planning Commission. I expected that I was going to hear these people singing Kumbaya. There was going to be peace signs all over the place. Everyone's going to just love this, right? And I got there, and just fortunately for me, I was the last speaker, so I got to hear what everyone else said first. Well, it wasn't a billboard relocation program. It was a billboard eviction program. So what the program really was going to be was it was going to be a program where, and by law they could do this, Metro was going to tell all the billboard owners, you have to vacate our property. Because they had a 30-day rolling, when the property was purchased by Metro from the railroad, they renegotiated the lease with all the billboard owners, and they brought it down to a 30-day billboard lease, and I could just hear it now. Well, you know, we're the government. I mean, are we going to switch? I mean, what else are we going to do with this property? You can have it forever. We want to have a 30-day program. They did that for everyone except Edwards Outdoor Advertising. And Edwards Outdoor Advertising doesn't have those big billboards that are up in the sky. They have the smaller ones. You might have seen my picture on one of them. Okay, there you go. And when they negotiate with Edwards Outdoor Advertising, it's a little easier to negotiate. They're a much smaller company than Clear Channel or CBS. They gave them a 24-hour notice. So theoretically, they can say, 24 hours, you got to take your small boards down. Well, when you look at what this did was, you would say, God, they're taking all these billboards down. I thought that, you know, the concept here of the United States of America that governments can't take property without compensating you for it. And Metro isn't a person, it's a governmental agency. And the city isn't a person, it's a governmental agency. So one of the things that people complained about was, you're putting Edwards Outdoor Advertising out of business. It's a small company. It's been in business since 1955. And, you know, this is a family business. And what are these people going to do when you take their stuff down? And the other thing that was extremely surprising, but not so surprising now that I've run for office, is the small businesses turned around and said, where are we going to advertise? You're taking away our ability to advertise. And I've heard people say all kinds of things. Oh, billboards are old-fashioned. Nobody reads billboards. Yeah, you really don't get anything from billboards. They're nothing. So I thought it was very interesting. You know, one of the last parts of the election process when we were campaigning was to go to the Home and Garden Show from K-Hits. K-Hits had the Home and Garden Show over at the Hyatt. I went over to the Hyatt and I said, I'd meet people there and I talked to them. And they'd say to me, oh, I recognize you. I said, really? How'd you do that? He says, I saw your face all over town. Well, they didn't see my face all over town. My face was only in 3 places. They were on 3 Edwards outdoor advertising billboards. So if people saw it, I wasn't like Dante Acosta, who put my picture on every campaign sign. That's not me. I had 3 of them. So billboards do work, or the little boards do work. So that's what was going on. But to make this matter even worse, if they were just going to take all these down, everything's going to be beautiful, everybody could say fine, but that's not what happened. What they want to do is exchange them and make up the revenue for Metro and additional revenue for the city by putting 48-foot by 14 feet high, double-sided electronic billboards on our freeway. Okay? So, as you might imagine, what I thought I was going to a meeting where everybody was going to be singing about how happy everybody was, it was a lynch mob. I mean, everybody was unhappy. The billboard owners were unhappy. The small business owners were unhappy. Okay? I was unhappy. It just didn't work. So that's kind of where we went to. Then we looked at it and we found out that 2 things were occurring. One is that one of these pieces one of these billboards are going to be on a piece of property currently zoned as open space. And it was very interesting because this piece of property, when it was purchased in 2005, was being eyed by at that time, the Santa Clarita Community Development Corporation. They are the people that are now called Bridge to Home that run the Winter Emergency Homeless Shelter. And they were planning to buy that piece of property for a permanent location for their shelter. And the city went and bought it out from underneath them. And there was if you read the newspaper articles at the time, there's a lot of discussions of whether or not the city did that simply because they wanted to prevent the shelter from being built. So now it was open space, and so now in order to put a billboard on it, they rezoned it at the last council meeting to business park, under the guise in saying, well, the land wasn't purchased with open space and parkland district funds. Well, that's probably true. You know, it wasn't purchased with my personal money either, but what difference does that make? It was zoned open space. So there's some issues with this all, and the last part about it is it rezones some of that property, and it's called a billboard overlay zone. So they didn't just say, here's enough room to put 1 billboard on. Oh no, they did an overlay zone. Actually, we did that for the permanent homeless shelter too. We turned around and we looked at the criteria for siting the shelter, and we said, okay, let's draw lines of areas that meet the requirements, that don't violate any of the criteria for the emergency shelter, and therefore a permanent shelter could be zoned by right, which means that you don't have to go through a big process at City Hall to build it there. You can just say, well, zoning says I can build it, so it's going to be there. Well, the same thing applies to billboards. So if you have a billboard overlay zone, billboards can be cited by right. And what happens is now when the city passed its sign ordinance, they made it illegal to put up any billboards. So this is an exception to that rule. And now they're saying, well, we're made the rule that you can only put up another billboard if you take so many billboards down. But I got to tell you, if they were willing to change the rules once, what's to prevent them from changing it again, right? And when Clear Channel comes and says, you know what, I'll put 5 more billboards down there, you know, and I'll give you this amount of money. You know, so if money is the only issue, then you can bet that there might end up being a problem. So these are some of the issues. Is the city really committed to preserving open space? I mean, if they zone something open space, and we know even in the even with the open space and parkland preservation district, up to 10% of the acreage purchased can be used for active parkland. Okay, that was told to us right at the beginning. But once they generate it as open space, I think active parkland is one thing. Commercial use is a different thing. And so that's a question. And should the cities make decision on which companies will do business in Santa Clarita? So if Edwards Outdoor Advertising, for example, has these small boards up there, why should the city make a decision now all of a sudden that we're going to put you guys out of business when they go right in the same business and put a billboard on the freeway and lease the land and be the leaseholder now for exactly the same kind of business that they just put a company out of business for? And by the way, that's not the only place they've done that. Have you looked at any bus benches lately? Don't bus benches have advertising panels on them, right? So I just don't believe that the city at any time should be in competition with its businesses inside the city, and I don't think they're the ones that make the decision and take their place. So to me, my question is the prospect of city revenue more important than promoting private businesses? So if you can make money, I mean, if we can make money now taking over billboards, someone suggested today maybe the city should take over restaurants. How about hotels? What else does the city want to take over?
Alan?
Yes.
Did we ever find out why the city never asked for a bid and just accepted Metro and All Vision?
No. No, we never did. I think one of the things, I was just reading there's a Metro meeting tomorrow. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's, the city of Santa Clarita has come across, and they've approved the plan. But now the Metro Executive Board has to approve the plan, and they have their own staff report. And the agreement with them is is online. And so I started reading it. And what it says is that it notes that staff to staff were negotiating this together. And then it was the city that offered Metro the lease of that property to put the billboards on. So I don't know how the billboards are actually going to get there, because right now, I'm not sure. I haven't read the total agreement. I don't know if All Channel is planning to build the billboards themselves, or if they're planning to outsource that and ask for a bid from someone else. I don't know which is going to happen.
Remember when Marcia asked, is this the best deal we could get? And the lady that was representing, I don't know which entity, she said, no, it was not. Do you understand why Marcia or anybody on the city council wouldn't at least want to challenge that?
Only if there has been some backroom or some phone calls being made back and forth between the county and the city, so that somebody's already in agreement to this. Because what they're talking about is, why have All Vision in the middle of this deal? Why should, if Metro is vacating the land and the city is going to be the leasee, why don't they go directly to a billboard? If they're going to put up billboards, why not go directly to the company that's going to build them? Why do they have to have this agent in the middle that's going to collect a piece of that money? And that's what they're talking about. So the only reason I can think of is that there's something that we don't know. It's kind of like Community Conservation Solutions, right? We didn't know why they were doing that until we figured out that we had a council member that was a director.
The other thing that I thought was really odd about that is, I've been in advertising most of my life. I've never heard of anybody come up with a 50-year guaranteed contract when they don't even know what they're capable of.
Well, that's part of what I'm going to talk to tomorrow at the county meeting, because I read the staff report, and the staff report that's that is being presented to the executive county team doesn't include some of the things that were talked about at our council meetings. So, for example, there's nothing in that report that indicates that there's an issue with whether or not the new electronic billboards can meet the power requirements of our ordinance. Our ordinance says you have to have a 12% power reduction in what you do. Well, I mean, they kept asking for that information and asking. It's not available. Why would anybody want to go spend millions of dollars to all of a sudden find out that they can't meet the power requirement and therefore can't meet the ordinance? And I know in the development agreement it says if you can't meet the ordinances, you can't build it. But you know what's going to happen. Once it's built, it's up there. They're going to cry, I spent millions and millions of dollars. And you know what's going to happen. They're going to change the rules. So that could be one of the things they're banking on. There's also, I'm trying to remember, there's also, one was power. What was the other thing that they hadn't completely discussed? Oh, how are you going to, according to what the city asked for, specifically what Marcia asked for, was that those billboards had to be shielded from the view of any of the existing homes on both sides of the freeway over on the 14. Well, I don't see anything in the agreement with that's being presented to the county that says, yeah, we're going to meet that requirement. And what happens if they don't meet that requirement? So what happens if after all these things are built and they're shining and they sold all the advertising and all of a sudden the three existing houses are, you can still, it's still shining in their windows. Do you think our council is going to stick up for their agreement and say, oh yeah, you're going to tear these down? No, that's not going to happen. I think it's a bad deal. I think it's a deal that hasn't been vetted. I think it's a deal that they're just going to push through, and they'll change the rules whenever they have to. And that's not the kind of city I want to live in. When this is all done, what methods will be available for small business to advertise? More bus benches? Gosh, who owns the bus benches? The city, doesn't they? Yeah, I thought so. And are these decisions being made too quickly? And that's exactly what we're talking about, Minerva, are those decisions being made too quickly? Should they have waited? Should they have vetted it? Should they have known what the council was going to look like when they made the decision? Because this is a 50-year decision. So it's not a good deal. So the city council decision has been made, but it's not over. So Michael's here, and he has petitions to establish a referendum to put the billboard issue on the ballot, and that's currently being circulated. So they've got a pretty high bar to get over, to get enough signatures. But the idea is, if they can get enough signatures, they can get it on the ballot so that the voters in Santa Cruz will decide whether or not there'll be electronic billboards on the freeway. Michael, did you want to say something, or
Sure.
come on up here? Come on, Barry, and he's been kind of instrumental in the billboard discussion.
Hello, everybody. All I can really tell you is I'm not a public speaker, so forgive me. This ordinance, if it's passed, Edwards still gets paid off. Those signs are still coming down. So the best of two worlds. If we get this passed, then the city will get to vote if they want billboards. Meaning, again, Edwards is done. There's no reversing that. Though, as far as I understand.
Well, there's one question about that.
Okay. So I'm asking, right now there's people out there getting things signed, but we need to get 17,000 signatures by the 29th. It's not impossible. There's 205,000 people living in the city. So I collected 160 at the park myself. So we're asking, and people are meeting us every day to pick up 3 and 4 packs. So people all over the city, if you get 21 and turn them in, it can be done. But the best thing about this is it's not saying no billboards. The billboards are already passed. It's a done deal. It's asking it to be reversed and put up for us to vote on it. If you want to read it, you're welcome to. We have plenty of packs here. Again, the best part is then the city would have to disclose all the negotiations that have to be done. Clear Channel, CBS, Edwards, any company that would like to bid on it, then the city council would have to put it to the public, and as the public of the city, we would, I mean, I still can tell you, I went to the park Earth Day, and I would tell you 70% of the people that came up to me still didn't even know the billboards were coming up. And I got involved in this only for one fact is I didn't know the billboards were even coming up. And then I went to the meeting, and then I just kind of looked into this personally and said, how is this going on when I've been here 22 years? How are we getting these billboards and nobody really knows about it? And a funny thing is some people don't even know the election happened, so it's kind of hard to say, you know, I mean, it's really interesting when you get involved with talking to people, but we're asking, and we have a Facebook site called CAB, C-A-B-B, that you can join, or you can just view, you don't even have to join, that'll keep you updated to where people are gonna be every day, you know, getting signatures. You guys can sign one if you're here now. But what we really need is everybody to hopefully take one in their neighborhood to their associations, and then that person might know somebody else that'll take one, and we have 3 weeks. But every day, I believe there are people out there right now collecting signatures as we speak in front of stores. So it is a real good possibility that this will happen. But one of the things that Alan, I don't know the exact name of the site because, again, I'm not running for anything, but one of the other sites that one of the signs are going on, the land's contaminated. And what the city didn't disclose is that the city has to pay to clean up that contaminated land to build the sign. And Alan, forgive me, what's the one up on Remsen, thank you. So we're still dealing with who's going to pay for the cleanup if that sign gets put up. So there's a lot of things. Another thing that, again, I've talked to a few people, and they promised us no alcohol advertising. And alcohol can be advertised. So there's a lot of, I mean, you're all welcome to take a copy, read it, but our best chance of stopping it and asking them to let us vote as citizens is getting this passed. And again, we need 11,000, but they asked for 17,000 for a cushion because they have to be residents of the city. They have to check it. If you look at this whole thing, only the last page is 21 signatures. So everybody has a right to read what they're signing. So this wasn't a petition you might have signed of like one of us going around saying we don't want it. This is the real thing. And this will be taken, I believe, down to LA once the signatures are gathered, and it will stop them in their tracks. This is the cheapest way. This isn't costing us any money. After this goes, then, of course, the lawyers will, no matter what happens, if we don't stop it this way, our tax dollars will get involved fighting them for all the other reasons. They changed the open park space to, and actually, I don't even know if they filed for the permit the wrong way. They haven't answered the question on if the city, if Metro applied for the permit for the one that for the open space. So anyway, you're welcome. Please see me at the end. I apologize, I had cards to give everybody, but the site, if you're on Facebook, is CAB, C-A-B-B, and that's where we'll keep everybody updated. But I'm telling you, I've given out a lot of these, a lot. I mean, I had people, whenever I stop, I'll post it. I'll be at Starbucks, and you'll have 5 people come over, and they'll grab 2 or 3. So I'm here tonight. I have quite a few, and you know, if anybody, again, has friends that want them, we'll give you our phone numbers, and I'm just a homeowner volunteer. There's 4 or 5 other volunteers. Because of the holidays, so a lot of them are out of town tonight, so they couldn't be here. But I'll be at the back at the end of the meeting, Alan. You have a copy, right? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just to sum it up, I think that what's really important is that we always get told the truth. Here's a little bit of truth that this is there's nothing that the city does that doesn't kill lots of trees. This is the development agreement that they want to pursue. This is the agenda with the county and with Metro. And I want to read a little bit from the staff report. This is a staff report that's going to executive committee, because I kept hearing that this was all a Metro deal, right? And in some respects, it's true. It says this action is consistent with the board action, that's the Metro board action, of May 23rd, 2013, under which Metro contracted with All Vision to identify and negotiate opportunities for Metro to reduce its static billboards where possible and replace them with a fewer number of higher revenue generating digital boards. There's a question of money. And so it says, in order to replace the revenue, because the agreement is really revenues, the city offered to lease 3 city-owned parcels to Metro for 50 years for the development and operation of 3 digital billboards with 6 faces. And the existing money that they're talking about eliminating is $186,000 per year. $186,000 per year. Remember, they were going to spend $1 million a year to buy billboards? For $186,000 a year, they could have said, well, we'll just give you the $186,000. Take down the billboards. Right? So we're not talking about a huge amount of money. Except the annual income to Metro from the 3 sites is now estimated to be $400,000. So that's $400,000 to Metro, $400,000 or $600,000 to the city, and some amount to All Vision. And these proposed digital billboard sites have been selected and approved by the city. So it sounds to me like this is not something that's just a Metro deal where Metro's the bad guy and the city's just being carried along, couldn't help not wanting to collect a little bit of money. But they've been involved in this. And it doesn't sound like, everybody kept talking about, well, we've been talking about this for, remember they kept saying how many years they were talking about this for? But the contract with All Vision wasn't let until May. So this is all happening very quickly. And it's going to be interesting. So tomorrow, there's a meeting of the Metro Executive Board. And it's going to be at 11:30 a.m. And I know Tim Ben and I are going down. Anybody else want to join us on the trip? Perfectly welcome to attend with us. We're going to leave from the Via Princesa Metrolink station at 9:54 on train 212. So, be there a little earlier to buy your ticket. And we're going to go down and talk about it from a standpoint of, we have to talk about it from a standpoint of Metro. This is really good. Okay, guys? Because we'll be talking to Antonovich. We're talking to Kanabi, Antonovich, Ridley Thomas, Eric Garcetti, Diane Dubois, Don Kanabi, and Carrie Bowen. So it will really have to phrase this from a standpoint of, is this really what you want, county guys? Because once this starts, I can just see the city of Santa Cruz saying, you know what? One billboard on the 5 was good. What about 5 more? And then when it shines over into the county and into the unincorporated county, and what are you going to say, county? Because you were right at the start of this. So we'll see what they have to say tomorrow.